Casino workers of Reddit, what's the worst loss or worst case of gambling addiction you've seen?
My mother-in-law was at a casino in Vegas when there was some kind of altercation that involved a gun. The police told everyone to get down. While crouching on the floor, people were still reaching up to play the slots.
Not a worker, but in Las Vegas, we were watching a cover band in a casino. In the audience was a bride in full bridal gown alone at a table. The band leader asked her if they could play a song for them. She said, yes, but he's playing slots right now. An hour later, the guy still hadn't returned.
Had a lady in a nurse's uniform walk out the front of the casino. Stopped by where I was standing and just blurt out, I just lost my rent and grocery money. The only thing I could say was, oh no. She then looked at me and asked if I had any money she could borrow. I told her sorry but no.
I worked for a slot machine company and a woman called in, saying, our machine bugged and took all her money, about $3,000. She said she pressed the button once and it kept playing for her, and in 5 minutes all her money was gone. Of course the machine has logs and we had cameras. We had to show her video of her playing for almost 2 hours, pressing the buttons each time. She still told us that she did it once, and it took 5 minutes, and demanded her money back. Otherwise she wasn't going to be able to pay her rent and feed her kids. She called the police. Where I live, the state police manage gambling. They came and they told us she had no children, and then tried to use a stun gun in her purse on our technician. It didn't go well for her after that.
I dealt in 2 casinos in Australia, for a total of around 5 years. So many stories, but the worst one would have to be the guy at 5 a.m. on Christmas morning, who mentioned to the guy next to him that he had to be home by 7 a.m. so he could be there when his kids woke up and opened their presents, but was still at the table at 9 a.m.
My buddy worked security in a casino. He would tell me about having to kick people who soiled themselves out every couple weeks. Sometimes it was older folks who may suffer from incontinence, or drunk people who were too trashed to even realize what they were doing. But mostly it was the degenerate gamblers who felt like their machine was due any moment now and they didn't want to risk anyone else stealing their win.
I worked in a bar that had a gaming room with 250-ish slot machines. Our sewers back up, flooding the bar area. We still did not close, but most of the gamblers were fine waiting while we did the necessary cleanup. Worst problem gambler demanded I stop cleaning up and walk through the shit water to get him more change for the machines. When I refused, he tried to grab me. I kicked him out and he spent about 20 minutes yelling abuse at the security.
I was in a casino and a strip of lights in the ceiling burst into flames. Melted plastic, metal, and ash was raining down on the slot machines, and the people playing were simply brushing the burning bits off the screens and themselves. Security had to physically go over and cash them out and forcibly remove them from the area. The casino didn't even try to evacuate anybody though, they just cut the power to that bank of lights. Eventually the fire department showed up, got up on ladders and knocked a few holes in the ceiling to check to make sure the fire hadn't spread above the light fixtures. Then they left. As soon as they gave the all clear, people were back on those machines immediately. It was surreal.
Worked surveillance at a casino for a bit. Every time someone hit a jackpot at a slot machine we'd pull up their account. They were always, 100% of the time, down on their lifetime earnings. This included people that hit for $50,000 plus. Worst one I saw was minus $375,000 for the year. In July.
A girl at work, every so often, sends screenshots of what she won in online slots. Everyone in chat praises her, but I can't help but think, but what have you lost to get that but payday every once in a while? I know she plays during downtime at work, almost obsessively.
I once worked with some guys who played shitloads of scratchies. There was some loser's lottery thing going on. I think it was a radio show promo, where you wrote your name and phone hashtag on the back of the losing tickets, and they were doing prize drawings on those. They were saving their losing tickets for a kid who was doing that so you could see the piles of tickets they would lose on every week. Sure, they'd win on some of them, but there was no way that it could have been anywhere close to being ahead of the game. One guy would come into work and talk about a big win that he hit on the way home or over the weekend. It was suspicious that all of his bigger wins happened when nobody else was around.
I had a guy win $40K on a slot machine on one of his first pulls. The guy was so excited and went to cash out. The cage attendant gave him $2K as his winning. When he asked where the rest of the money was, she smiled and said, "Child support." Dude had to be escorted out by security.
Wait. I'm completely ignorant about this, but is that actually how it works? Can the casino see if you owe child support or have judgments against you before they dispense winnings?
Yes. The casino I worked at, the police station had a database that was somehow connected to ours, to see child support payments. I believe our programmer named it, Deadbeat Dad Detector.
I live in Australia, which most people don't know, has the highest rate of gambling losses per capita when compared globally. You can gamble at any pub/bar in Australia as long as you are 18 or older. In one state alone in the last 3 months of 2024, the total losses were $2.2 billion. It's very hard to watch but hard to fix, as it's legal and socially acceptable. At least when you go to Vegas, it's a trip with friends and/or family and people are having fun. No one is really having fun here, they're like robots on the slot machines. I have regularly seen people blow through a whole paycheck in minutes and then try to borrow money to win it back. Or get payday loans with insane interest rates. It's a big problem here, but there's too much money involved for anyone to change anything.
Former addict, 5 years clean, here, since January 1, 2020. I once had 2 doctor's appointments in the same day, one was for my knee and the other was just a routine checkup, but they were spaced out between 3 hours. Since I wasn't at work that day, I drove 60 miles to the casino only to lose $700 in that time frame. I did however make my second appointment, so that was a plus.
My first time to Vegas, I went with a large group of people. One of the boyfriends started off strong at blackjack. At one point he was up $300 from the $25 he had started with. But then he lost it all, which for me meant he lost $25. That was not how he took it. And for the rest of the time we were there, he tried to win the $300 back. I don't know how much money he lost, but I do know he had drained his checking account and maxed out a credit card. He didn't win back any money.
I was a hostess at a casino about 10 years ago. I worked on the top floor and normally watched people on the roulette tables below between orders. I saw a guy turn $50K into $250K, he was awesome, tipped us all and left. I carried on with my shift, went for my lunch at about 1 a.m., then went to the smoking area to find the same guy that had won with his head in his hands. He asked me for a cigarette so I gave him one. I noticed he was crying. He proceeded to tell me how he went for some drinks, came back, and lost it all and more. It was a regular thing seeing people crying in the smoking area, but this guy really effed up.
I'm a high-limits baccarat dealer and I have many regulars I see every single day. There's one lady who plays 3 to 4K a hand, and gets so far down that when she hits for a bonus, and makes $150K, she barely cares, because it doesn't even put her at even.
I worked in the cage at the time, guy came up and withdrew $10K from his checking and went out and played. Came back 30 minutes later and did it again. Another 30 minutes and did it again. Came back a 4th time and then started doing cash advances against his credit cards. Goes through all of them over the next 5 to 6 hours. Right before my shift ends, he's at my window, going through every card in his wallet, all of them are declining, and he asks if we offer credit. Which thank God we didn't. Altogether he probably lost a bit more than 120k in a night. Not the most I've seen, but he clearly couldn't afford to lose that much.
I've seen big losses to about 100k, but the one that sticked out to me the most was a guy who started betting 50 a hand on blackjack, lost, came back and put up another 200 to 500 a hand while he is shaking. He went to the ATM 3 times. The last 500 he lost. As I was about to grab the chip, he held his 500 in green in the bet. I had to tell him to let go. I think he was down 10,000 that night and looks like his life saving. Never saw him again after.
I fix/repair pokie machines in Australia, mostly in small rural towns, and the turnover figures on the machines are astonishing. One of the pubs has a lady that drops 40 to 50k a week, and all the pub has to do is ask her if she's okay. Would she like a cup of tea? People get so mad when they lose on these machines that they smash the screens or play button assemblies. Absolutely bonkers and completely government endorsed.
Well, I have 16 years in the casino business. I was a dealer for about 3 years and a pit boss for 9. The saddest thing I had witnessed happened over time. There was a genuinely very nice couple that came in and played Let It Ride. The game is atrocious odds-wise, utterly boring, and I was always miserable dealing it. The woman was in her early 50s, quite overweight, and wheelchair-bound, and the husband was very thin and mousy. The husband was always the one to play, and the wife would sit behind him. They didn't even bet heavily, but they were there 7 days a week for hours and hours a day, weeks in a row. As time went on, they stopped being as nice to the staff and to each other. They were both obviously not taking care of themselves as they had been, hygienically speaking. Eventually one night, the husband turned around to ask the wife for more money, and she absolutely broke down in a shaking, sobbing fit. Just uncontrollably, inconsolable. He was pretty demanding and she was slow handing over the last couple of 20s out of her purse, and she said, "Tom, this is it. If you lose this, we won't eat this month." I absolutely refused to take the money, called my supervisor over and explained the situation, and thankfully, unlike a lot of joints, they backed that decision up. That was very early on in my career, and it really hit me hard that I had taken tens of thousands of dollars from those people. If I remember right, we evicted them lifetime, and connected them with the state problem gambling service. When I was a pit boss, watching a table in high limit, I saw a guy buy in for 5,000, and run it up to about 250,000 by the time I went home. Badass run. So I come back in the next day at 5 p.m. and the guy is still there. Not surprising. The guy has about 125k in chips in front of him, so I say, "Oh man, Dave took a bit of a thumping while I was sleeping." The pit boss I was relieving was standing off to the side making the stop talking gesture, so I chuckled and went over to get him relieved. Turns out the guy had given it all back. And was in 350,000 more. Oof. Probably the craziest thing I had seen in all of those years was a guy, again in high limit, I was there all the damn time once I was a pit boss, who got beat up all night. Just hours of just getting thumped. After a particularly nasty beat on some splits and double downs, he said, "I lose one more hand, I'm shitting on the floor." I informed him that would be a super bad idea and went over to call surveillance and security. It was right at the end of a shoe, so this I'm calling while the dealer is shuffling. Security is up there close, but not too close. Surveillance is watching. First hand out of the shoe, dealer 10, peeks, rolls over the ace. Quicker than I could blink, the dude has his pants down grunting. Gaming commission and security were none too happy arresting the guy, but I was entertained.
Guy started with $300 and could do no wrong. When he got up to $5,000, we asked if he wanted to go to a high rollers pit because people would jump in on his game and mess him up. He said yes if I followed him there. In the high rollers pit he again could do no wrong, but what he was doing was chasing and bets he lost with higher bets. This worked out for him for a long time. He got up to almost 100 grand of $300 bucks. He called his girlfriend to get packed, they are going to Vegas to get married. He started losing. I told him to stop when he got to 80,000. He told me he just lost 20 grand and if he made it back he would quit. I told him he won 80, stop. By the time the girlfriend got there he lost it all and had $3,000 in markers. When she got there, he got up and held her and cried.
I worked at a casino as security for about a year, so I have plenty of stories. But in relation to your question, I saw a guy come in with a group of friends, never seen him before. He proceeded to win $10K that night on a couple slots. I saw him come back every night for the next month. Always walking out with his head down. The casino I worked at was smallish, but every decent payout had to be done with security present. So, yeah, he went through it all thinking he had the system figured out and then some. Lots of people had similar fates.
Worked at a casino for a few years in my early 20s doing FA executive/high-level player engagement. There was a woman in her 70s who played big but always made some money back. Well, she finally hit for around $1 million and promptly told the casino she would no longer be gambling or visiting. She was steadfast in that promise. Fast forward a year, and the casino wants their money back. They invite her down with all of the comps for her birthday, okay, but I'm still not gambling. We extended the invitation and gave villas/free everything to every gambling-aged family member she had. It was probably 15 plus people there to celebrate her birthday. By the end of the week, the family members gambled nearly $700,000 of her money back into the casino.
Not a casino employee, but we got a call at work one night for a check the well-being. It was casino security requesting us to check on subject who had lost a lot of money at their tables. The security manager advised that the subject left and was heard making a comment about wanting to end their life due to their losses. Thankfully, I got to the address and was able to speak with subject. They were embarrassed, but eventually told me that they had a gambling problem and that this wasn't the first time. They ended up getting transported to the hospital and then eventually spoke with one of our social workers, who was able to get her in therapy. Last I saw them, they had got out of debt and started her own business.
My name is Epicenter and I have a problem. I was in the Air Force at the time. Roughly 1996, I tagged along with a couple of friends to Las Vegas. I had no idea what I was doing, but went into Caesar's Palace with $100. The dealers helped me learn craps. I left that weekend with $2,300. Had a blast. Approximately a year later, I returned on a temporary duty assignment. I was supposed to be there 6 weeks. I blew through my whole checking and savings account, maxed out every credit card I had and was only there a total of 3 weeks. I happened to be there over the 4th of July weekend. We had a cookout planned. I never saw the light of day that whole weekend. Luckily, my roommate noticed my activity. He anonymously spoke to my first sergeant. I was called into his office, where we spent the better part of 2 hours breaking down what I spent. That's when reality hit me right in the nuts. We totaled it up to around $12,000. He sent me back to my home station with strict orders to go home and don't stop. It was about a 9-hour drive. I made it home, and was greeted by my home unit first sergeant the next morning. We spoke in depth and he assured me that I wasn't in any trouble. At no point did I neglect my duties. I was sent home for my own safety. It took me approximately 7 years to pay off that debt. It was a glorious achievement. If you're out there, SRA, insert name here, thank you for noticing and reporting me. I was pissed at the time, but sincerely appreciate your attention and concern now.